Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race, we are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 395 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited that you are here and excited to introduce my guest to you today. Today, we have Roberto Mandje on the show. Roberto is someone I have known for many years. I have admired for many years. I've seen him doing some of the coolest things I've ever seen someone do in the running space, just with the opportunities that come his way. But as you will hear today, that has come with a lot of growth. There have been a lot of moments where he needed to learn from mistakes that he had made or focus on the wrong variables, the wrong factors that kind of set him in the wrong direction. We are going to talk about Roberto's running journey. We are going to talk about how we can balance out our energy, know what to say yes to, what opportunities to turn down, to be with family, but also how to say yes when you are struggling to say yes to things because you have that guilt over saying yes. And finally, the thing you are all interested in, we're going to talk about what it was like for him to run with Lil Nas X. That came about all of a sudden. You're going to hear the story behind that. I really love Roberto and what he has done in the running space and continues to do in the running space. So let's get to this episode after a quick word from one of our sponsors. It's important to me that the supplements I take are of the highest quality. And that's why for 5 years, I've been drinking AG1. Unlike many supplement brands, AG1 conducts relentless testing to set the standard for purity and potency. They are continually searching for how to do things better. They've made 52 iterations of their formula, and they're always continuing how to change on that. So many people have been asking me if I do actually drink AG1 every day, and I do. And there is a reason for that. There is a reason I am having it twice a day right now as I am preparing for my surgery and recovering from my surgery. Quality for AG1 isn't just a buzzword. It's a commitment backed by expert-led scientific research, high-quality ingredients, industry-leading manufacturing, and rigorous testing. At each step of the process, AG1 goes above and beyond industry standards. So I know I can trust what's in every scoop of AG1 because it is NSF certified for sport, one of the most rigorous independent quality and safety certification programs in the supplement industry. And taking care of my health shouldn't be complicated. I love that AG1 simplifies this by replacing multiple health supplements like vitamins, digestive aids, immune support in one simple scoop. It covers my nutritional bases and sets me up for success in one scoop, 60 seconds. AG1's ingredients are heavily researched for efficacy and quality, and I love that every scoop also has prebiotics, probiotics, digestive enzymes for gut support. I've partnered with AG1 for so long because they make such a high quality product that I genuinely look forward to drinking it every day, or twice a day as I do right now. If you want to replace your multivitamin and more, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free travel packs with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/Tina. That's drinkag1.com/Tina. Check it out. Roberto, I am so excited to welcome you to the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited selfishly. We've had a little bit of time to catch up pre-recording, and now we get more time to catch up. As you, using your words, we're like two ships passing in the night. You and I come across each other a lot, but it's usually like one person's going somewhere, rushing the other direction. Or in the last time I think I literally set my eyes on you. You were running past with, at the time, an unknown person to me. I had no idea who that was. Come to find out, Lil Nas X was with you. And we're going to talk about that piece of it at some point, because that's such an interesting story. And I know it's been talked about a lot, but just a really amazing example. Actually, let's just begin with that. Okay. And then we'll go into deeper about you. So as I said, you two ran past myself, Kaylee, and Sandy. You both turned around and waved. And that story ended up picking up a lot of attention because for him, it wasn't something he'd been training for a long time. And this was a goal race, and he'd been thinking about it for a long time, as far as I know. Tell the listeners the story of how Lil Nas X ended up running the United NYC half.
Yeah, and actually, I'm not sure when this will go live, but today I was reminded that it's his birthday. So shout out to Lil Nas X. He's 25 years young. So yeah, not that we're best friends or anything now, but he's a great guy. I met him just that morning. It turns out he had been in town from, I believe, LA, and kind of just walking around the city and saw some signage for the United Airlines NYC half, and just kind of asked, like, what is this? And found out it was a half marathon occurring in the next day or two. And he had his people contact Roadrunners, and Roadrunners was like, of course, we'd love to have you. So then that kind of started getting the wheels turning, and he, got him signed up, and he was, low key and chill enough to just go and pick up his own bib at the experience. And so he did that. And then sometime Saturday afternoon, I was at home. Well, I was at the playground with my kids, and I got a text, and then connected to a couple of my colleagues at NYR, and they're like, hey, are you available to pace a VIP? And I was like, sure. What's the pace? And like, we don't know. We don't think it'll be too quick because he's an experienced runner. And I was like, sure. And I noticed that they weren't telling me who it was, and I didn't pry. So I thought, okay, I'm probably in the shape to run an hour 20 on the fast end. And then beyond that, like, no worries. So yeah. So then I found out on the next day, on Sunday. I met him at 6:30 with our PR team and as well as his team. And
did you recognize him right away?
I had never heard of him, so I wasn't told who he was till that morning. They texted me like, hey, by the way, it's Lil Nas X. And as I've somewhat already made the joke, it's like I knew who Lil Wayne was, I knew who Nas the rapper is, and I knew who X was as far as exhibit. So I combined all three. I was like, well, Lil Nas X must be some sort of entertainer. But yeah, I had no idea who he was, anything about him. So, and likewise, he also had never heard of me, as he shouldn't have. So we really met each other on even ground, even footing. And yeah, we really hit it off. He's just such a nice young man and such a student of the sport. He had a lot of questions about training and attire and the distance and how people go about it. And yeah, so we got to spend 13.1 miles together, just kind of growing his love for running.
Which impressively, he ran the whole thing you can say this now. What was his running experience prior to this?
Yes, I'm not 100% certain, other than what he told me, which is like he had done a few, maybe 5Ks before, here and there occasionally. And he was more of a treadmill runner than a traditional outdoors runner. So I can't remember. He didn't mention when was the last time he ran, but he's like, yeah, I run here and there occasionally on the treadmill, and 3 miles was the longest he had ever gone. So we were certainly going into uncharted territory as far as distance, event, and even terrain. But, I was confident that we would get from the start line to the finish line. I told him like that's our main goal, to just have a good time and experience the distance. So, we didn't have any time goals in mind. So that also kind of freed us up to really just experience it as it came.
Do you get the sense that he's the kind of person that does a lot of those kind of randomly, I think I want to try this, go for it?
I mean, again, I didn't know him beforehand, but since then, I funny enough, driving home that afternoon, I popped his songs on Spotify, and, I got to know him a little bit better. And yeah, he's definitely a free spirit, a very gregarious human being. So yeah, he does strike me as the sort of person that like he just goes with the flow. And I'm walking around, I see that there's a race going on. I don't know what the distance is, but I feel like doing it, and I'll jump into it. So he has the gift of youth, and he's very athletic, so that helped. But yeah, I think he's the sort of person that kind of just goes with the flow and has a good time. And he had a smile on his face from mile 1 to mile 13.
I love that. I wonder if him wearing the race shirt in the race will, you know how sometimes people, and I'll admit I've been like this in the past, are like, you should never wear the race shirt in the race itself. And a lot of people continue to do so. But I wonder if him doing that will slightly change the messaging around that to where people don't say that as much as like a shaming thing, because he did that, and I'd imagine that there's some people who are now like, oh, I don't know if I'd say that anymore, because in his case, maybe he didn't have anything else that that is specifically made for running. So yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of that. When we do the various course strategies throughout the year for the marquee events, that's one of our top 3 things we say. We say nothing new on race day. And that's exactly what that means. So, whether you buy a shirt at the expo or you get the race shirt, like, cool, try it on, but then leave it for like sometime after the race. And I've definitely, ascribed by that. But yeah, I mean, he was certainly somebody who just kind of went against the traditional norms. Like, you want to train for a race, you want to fuel, you want to taper, all this stuff that as a fellow runner. And yeah, he didn't do any of that, but he was able to get away with it. So I think he's maybe more of an exception than the norm. But at the same time, like, if you go into it with the sort of mindset that he went into it, like, you could get away with that. You could have a good time because he was just out there for the experience. He wasn't trying to wear like the latest, fastest carbon fiber shoes or like take 16 gels or go for a PB. I think as he learns more about running and he catches a bug, then he can start to fine tune a few things and he'll figure out like what works for him. But the first and most important thing for me was, having him in my care, if you will, was just make sure he has a great introduction to racing, great introduction to the great events that New York Road Runners puts on. And then, just introduce him to running. And I had an opportunity to do that over about 2.5 hours.
Last question about him before we move on to you and your journey. Do you think you've planted the seed? You know which seed I'm talking about, the November seed.
I definitely think so. Whether it's this November or future November, TBD, because I really don't know his schedule. He's a busy guy between recording and traveling and all that. But he was definitely talking about it as soon as we crossed the finish line. He had never gotten a medal before. So, this is somebody who has won, I believe, Grammys and some of those other, prestigious accolades, but like a medal from a road race from New York Road Runners, like that's something he had never won. So cool. He definitely has the seed. I did tell him and his team was like, hey, you feel good now, but tomorrow you're going to be walking sideways in the next few days because you've just like quadrupled the longest run you've ever done. So I think the seed's there. I would be surprised if our paths didn't cross again. And I guess to be continued.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I remember the first time someone told me about post-marathon about, oh, you'll be walking downstairs backwards. And I was like, downstairs? Don't you mean upstairs? Isn't upstairs going to be the hard? And they were like, oh, no. It is down. And then you only know that when you actually go through it the next day or later that day and you're walking backwards down the stairs and you're like, now I see why they say this is so hard. Okay. So getting into you and your journey, you have so many accolades yourself, running in the World Cross Country Championships, the XTERRA Trail World Championships, and also being, no big deal, an Olympian in the 2004 Olympics. There's plenty of things that we could talk about from your own journey, but I actually want to focus on the part after that, because I'm sure you've covered your Olympic journey many times. We've had many guests on here who have talked about their own journey to those moments and what it meant to them. But now, as it has been, 20 years, does that feel weird to say, first off?
It's awesome. I love it.
You love it?
I still feel young. Yeah. I'm a lover of time.
Okay.
So it's great.
So now it has been 20 years since that moment. What are some of your reflections as you look back on being an Olympian? You said you're a lover of time. Now that you have that time to look back on that experience of being in the 2004 Olympics, what kind of comes to mind for you?
It's almost like, when I look back on it, it's almost like looking back at a different version of myself. Like, we're all the same people throughout our lives in a way, but I know another way we're not. So, 42-year-old Roberto, which is what I am now, versus 22-year-old Roberto is like, I just look back like, hey, I'm proud of you, because like at the time and even now, like you're always present in your timeline. So that was the oldest I ever was then. And I knew I didn't have the whole world figured out, but I had so much ahead of me and so many goals and aspirations. But I also was maybe a little bit hard on myself. But also very much an optimist. And now looking back as a 42-year-old to 20 years ago, it's like, hey, like you did well, kid, because that kid from 20 years ago has evolved into the person that I am today. And I continue to evolve. So yeah, so that's why when you say it's been 20 years, it's like, that's an accomplishment, because I haven't been idle for those 20 years. I've been working on myself, working to evolve. And even present day, I'm looking to evolve. And now I'm a parent, I'm a husband, so it's like I'm a different version of that kid, but like that 22-year-old kid helped me get to where I am today. And I look forward to just continuing that journey. And yeah, I look at my life as a book, metaphorically speaking. And that was several chapters ago. And I'm currently in this chapter writing the next chapter, but also being very present at the moment.
Do you feel like you were able to take in that moment, for a 22-year-old, obviously you've got that, I'm still young, I'm at the start of my life kind of approach to things, or I would imagine you did, unless you're an old soul. But do you feel like you were able to take in that moment, or did that pressure you mentioned, or being hard on yourself, did that take away some of that presence?
It definitely took away some of it. I was always fairly competitive and hard on myself. I remember even going back to high school, I would actually win races. And if I won a race, but didn't set a record, I would find that I would maybe fixate more on that record that I didn't set, or, whatever. So it took several years into my professional running career, and probably way too many years, to start to allow myself kindness and grace, but it was maybe the way I was wired, where by not allowing myself to be complacent, then I would have that edge to keep training. And then the Olympics is like, for most people, at best, it's once in a lifetime opportunity. And even if you go several times, like Hikam El Garouche did, you could still go in as a favorite, which he did in 96 and 2000. And he walked away without the gold medal. Fortunately, he got in 2004. So for me, it was like the Olympics didn't go the way I'd hope. I was super, super fit, etc. So it took a while for me to be able to really celebrate what I had accomplished, just being there and representing Equatorial Guinea and my family and yada, yada. So it was the sort of thing, like, it took, unfortunately, too long, but that's also part of my journey and part of my growth and evolution. And I think that's made me a better parent, a better husband, and in the running space, a better coach, because I really try to preach kindness to people, like kindness to others, but really be kind to yourself, to the athletes that I work with, and also just focusing on the journey as much, if not more, than the destination, because that destination, you don't know what you will be like when you get there. And if you only fixate on that, there's so much that you could miss along the way.
Yeah, let's go into that a little bit more. Is that really caught my eye on your website, but also just with you in general, it very much seems about, who you're becoming, that you are, with your coaching, you are helping people to be the best versions of themselves, instead of just getting them to their goals. Do you think that moment on the Olympics was the start of where you really started to think about that, of, okay, I've reached the pinnacle of a runner's career, and yes, I want to get back to that. Of course you want to try and do that again. I'm sure in that moment you were thinking about the next Olympics already, but how much of believing that now, about the journey being the biggest part of it, as opposed to just the end, the finish line, the goal, the championship, the PR, whatever it might be. What are some other elements that come to mind for you in learning that lesson?
I would say just life in general, for people who dedicate so much of their lives into something like sport or, academics or what have you, you realize that there's lessons that you can learn along the way that parallel life. And, you could try as hard as you can to plan for, and when you're chasing the Olympics, you very much cut your life into 4-year cycles, because it's kind of slated that way for you. So it was the lessons I learned along the way was like, don't live too far ahead because you're going to miss out so much in between. And obviously there's balance and discipline that you need to have in there, but like putting your happiness on something that may or may not occur in 4 years, even if everything leading along the way is just checking off boxes, like you're doing the right races, you're finishing well, you're placing whatever, that still doesn't mean that you're going to get that result on year 4 of your current journey. And if you just focus so much on that, you miss out so much, and your happiness is really laying on one particular event that, again, you may or may not make. So for me, I just have to learn through at least one Olympic, if not 2 Olympic cycles, that like, hey, there's more to life than this. Like, why did you ever get into running? And some people might say they got into running because of the Olympics. There's probably a listener to this podcast who will watch their first Olympics this summer in Paris and be inspired. Maybe they're high school age or whatever. And I think that's fine, but just learn, I would try to be a better or more well-rounded individual, because there's so much more to life than that one pinnacle moment. And if you are lucky enough to get to that pinnacle moment, whether it's in academia or sports and the Olympics specifically, then fantastic. But even when you get there, like, then there's the now what? Like, okay, you got there and you won Olympic gold, and now what? Like, there's still probably so much more that you could accomplish, and like you could feel then a little bit unfulfilled. So by being more well-rounded and being appreciative of the journey, if you do get to that pinnacle and you do get that gold or what have you, then that's like the cherry on top of a, well-crafted sundae, if you will, versus just like a cherry on top of nothing, because you've just sacrificed so much of your happiness and your mental health well-being rather. And so for me, it was like, there was many times where I wasn't enjoying the process or the journey, but I was doing it just because I was trying to reach something. And I was almost like I was chasing a ghost version of myself that didn't really exist, but I somewhat created. And that's not the way to go about, really enjoying yourself.
Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I have been working with Tracksmith for 5 years now. I have loved every moment of it, the support that they give to me, the support that they give to the running community. I want to remind you that there is still time for you to get the PR bonus. That's getting $100 off your next Tracksmith purchase by setting a new PR in 2024. Be sure to go make the most of that opportunity while you still have it. That is a huge give from Tracksmith to support runners in their pursuit of goals, whatever that may be. Doesn't matter how fast your PR is. If you can prove that, you will get that $100. Go check that out right now. If you have not already, you can go to tracksmith.com/Tina. But I want to talk to you today about, I mentioned about 5 years ago, Tracksmith sent me my first pair of session speed shorts. These are high stretch, they're lightweight. They have about, I guess I shouldn't say at the inseam because it's different for men and women, but they do have this shorter inseam, and it's just at the right length on my leg. Now, that first pair of shorts they sent me, I still wear multiple times a week in a row, wash it, wear it again. It is my go-to. I have used it hundreds of times, and it is still the exact same quality it was when I first got that pair. These shorts are my favorite by far, and they are something that I continue to use year after year. I encourage you to go check out those session speed shorts and the other items that Tracksmith has on offer. Remember, Tracksmith is known for their quality, their durability, which is one of the best ways we can be environmentally conscious. You can go to tracksmith.com/Tina to check out my favorites. Be sure to go check out that PR bonus if you have not already. Do you think that enjoying yourself piece of it is maybe a sign for any listener, regardless of like what level they're at, if they have a goal, they're working towards something? How do you understand yourself when you're training back then, but especially now for someone listening who has a goal, has something they're working towards, of knowing, okay, this feels bad, I'm not enjoying this because I'm tired and I'm exhausted from my training, versus I'm not enjoying this because I'm too focused on the goal, the end point?
Yeah, I think, it's a fine line, and everybody's wired differently as far as intrinsic motivation versus external and things like that. But I think it really comes down to it's something I try to preach a lot, is like your why, determining what is your why, like whether it's running a marathon, are you running it for yourself or in honor of a loved one? Or are you trying to run under 3 or whatever? Like whatever that why is, like keep checking in with that, because that'll sort of serve, I believe, as your North Star. So it's like, yeah, training, especially not just at the high level, but the more you train to chase a specific goal, you're going to encounter those days where it's like the weather's crummy, you don't feel like going, your body's giving you feedback that it's tired or what have you. And distance running is naturally challenging. So like you have to know the difference between like, okay, I'm not enjoying this run because I'm tired, but it's part of like the whole that I'm training for, versus where it's like, not only am I not enjoying this run, but like I don't even like what I'm doing, but I feel like I'm a bit of a prisoner because like I don't have anything else to fall back on. Like I need to like, I've invested so much time in this where like I feel trapped by this goal that I've chased, whether you made it publicly known or not. So it's like I just spent 4 years at university on scholarship. I'm now running professionally. I'm under contract with whatever brand. Like I need to, like, this is the only way I can make money. This is the only way. So it's like you start to feel trapped, and it's like, okay, that's when you have to kind of check, like, why are you doing this? Because if you're not enjoying the journey, unless you're incredibly talented, you're not going to really get the most out of yourself. In which case, as I like to tell people, it's like, if you train well, you're going to be happy. If you're happy, you're going to train well. So kind of cyclical. And again, no training program is going to be flawless, but like, again, knowing the difference between why you're feeling one way physically and why you're feeling another way mentally, because the physical part usually has more to do with the training cycle and the weeks that you're in. Whereas like the mental part, where it's like, you're dreading this, you're not enjoying it, you're putting too much pressure on yourself. That's where you tend to just miss out on your goal, because like you're not really in it.
For someone listening who maybe has their goal, what they want is a sub 3, a sub 4, a Boston qualifier, and they've been thinking about this a lot of like, am I actually enjoying this process? Maybe your words are really echoing into their heart, but they maybe have been talking about this for years to friends, to the point of where when it's race day, they feel everyone is watching their results to be like, did they do it? Did they do it? They know how much it means to them. They know that like people come up to them. I don't know about you from your past experience, but I swear, whenever I had an injury or a niggle or something came up, it felt like everyone in the world was like, how's your training going? And I'd be like, please don't ask me. Please don't ask me. And they'd be like, how's your training going? It just it feels like when you're paranoid about it not happening is when people seem to sense to ask. But for someone listening who is maybe resonating with what you're saying, but they feel shame for saying like, I need to take a break from this, or maybe I'm not enjoying this. I need to step back. I need to try a 5K or some trail running or something else. What would you say to them about that? Like, fear of failure, I guess, of saying like, I couldn't do it, and so I'm trying something else for a while.
Yeah, I think honestly, it's, one thing I like to quote that I started saying a lot during the pandemic is running meets you where you are. And that's true regardless of what ability and level you have. So like, you really can't fake that. So for somebody going through that, it's like, it's your running, like you and only you should own that. Running shouldn't own you. So like, you should be, again, the driver of your own happiness, your own destiny. So like, if you're going through those, like, it's 100% okay to pivot, and pivot could look like a myriad of ways, but pivot could mean take some time off, which will be great mentally and physically recovery, stepping away. It could be changing courses, like instead of running on the roads, you start running on the trails, which I kind of did because I got tired of being on the track. It could be different distances. Like, it is whatever you want it to be, and it's okay as long as it works for you. And like, it's your running. It doesn't have to make sense or appeal or resonate with anybody else, because it's your running. So I would say like, that's okay. And yeah, the shame, like, that comes from, especially the day and age that we live in, with social comparison and social media. Social media is not reality. People see what you want them to see. They don't see maybe all the bad workouts or the bad races or whatever. Some people obviously showcase that, but at the end of the day, it's your running. So own it, make it work for you. And if you need to take a break, because chances are, if you're brave enough to do that, you're actually going to come back a lot better with a newfound love for the sport than if you just kept pushing through, because as you know, being a fellow runner, there's physical breakdown from just over wear and tear, but there's also mental breakdown where people are just like, I'm burnt out. I'm over it. And it's like, that's harder to come back for most people, because long after your bones and muscles have healed and recovered, your mind's like, I don't want to experience that trauma anymore. So again, running meets you where you are. You don't have to answer to anybody but yourself when it comes to running. It's your running. And the beauty of it is that, relatively speaking, it could be done anywhere. So pivot as you need, and take the time that you may need. And to the goal portion of that, a good friend of mine who a lot of maybe listeners will know, his name is Casey Neistat. He had been chasing sub 3 for 17 years and 24 marathons, and wow. It was through no lack of effort. He made a great film about it because, spoiler alert, he finally broke 3 in Tucson last year, and I paced him in New York last year. He ran 3:01, which is his fastest time ever, and then but he was very unhappy with it because he knew he had more. He had worked so hard, and I was like, hey, just as I said earlier, you could work so hard, but maybe on the day it's just not your day for whatever reason. We're talking about sub 3 and running 3:01, like the margin is so minimal, but he knew he still had it, and he was mentally fresh and still motivated, and he had enjoyed the journey. He's like, hey, let's give this another shot. And we found a marathon, and we went out, and like 5 weeks later, and he ran 2:57 and just huge monkey off his back. And it was fantastic to see. But this is somebody who always owned running, and he made it work for him, and he took breaks when he needed to, and he was unapologetic about it. And I think that's kind of a lesson of perseverance, but also making sure that running works for you and not the other way around.
So I saw he ran the half that you and I both did as well a few weeks ago. Have you had a conversation with him about how he feels about running now, having achieved that goal?
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, we're very good friends. I think I last spoke to him maybe a few days ago. And I think both him and our collective buddy, Neve Schulman, who also wanted to get sub 3 and did it a few years back, they're in a running space now where they could really enjoy running because they've gotten that proverbial monkey off their back. So that was their first race together as sub 3 runners, and they ran the half marathon together. They ran, I think, 1:35, and I think he might want to try to run a faster time for a half at some point, but just having that goal off the table has been allowed him to enjoy running in a different way. But as I said before, he had been chasing this goal for so long, and something that resonates with a lot of people through the video that he made, that you can see that it's perseverance, but it's also like, you have to own the run. You can't let it own you. And he had this goal and he was going after it. And there's times where he thought about giving up, but by taking a step back and resetting and not going after it every time, he was able to kind of pick and choose his battles. And I think there's something that really resonates with people there, because whether it's sub 3 or sub 4, like everybody out there has a goal in the running space, whether it's finishing a race or running a certain time. So
what would you say is the challenge that, being a well-respected, well-known coach in the space, what are some of the challenges, the biggest challenges that your runners, it seems to be a common theme beyond what we're talking about here?
I would say belief. I think many citizen runners, as I tend to call runners who are not, at the professional level or aspirational runners, they don't allow themselves to dream in the way that maybe elites do. And some of that is just elites are wired in a way where, like, you have to see yourself winning that Olympic gold medal long before you even become an Olympian, which sounds like absurd to maybe the average person, where running physiologically doesn't care who you are. Like, if you put in the work, the right amount of work, and you recover, you're going to get better. Some people's ceiling is maybe 10 feet. Some people's ceiling is maybe 5 feet, but regardless, like, as long as you can get as close to your ceiling as possible, that's success. And success looks differently for Kipchoge trying to go under 2 hours than Billy, who's trying to go under 4 hours, let's say. But Kipchoge has that belief to think he could run under 2 hours, which is something that nobody has ever done before and seems outrageous, where Billy doesn't believe that he could do it, for example. And Billy's a made up name. So, the challenge for a lot of people I work with is to first and foremost get them to believe in themselves as much as I believe in them. And I tell them at the beginning, it might be 100% me believing in you more than you believe in yourself. But hopefully by the end of this training cycle, it's more 50-50, if not like 60-40, where you believe in yourself, almost more, because that ability to allow yourself to dream also frees you up from setting limits. And I think, obviously operate in reality, but allow yourself to dream and just chase to see how good you could be. So a lot of people I work with might have a goal of sub 3 or sub 4. And it's good to know that as a benchmark. But when I start to work with them, it's like, okay, we know that, but the goal is just to get you as fit as possible, because along the way, we may have to modify that goal because you might be quicker than that. And it's really special to see people's belief grow as their fitness grows, and they maybe do some benchmark races along the way. And it's really beautiful because you see a person almost cocoon like a butterfly and become a different runner. And just to be able to play a part in that is so special and satisfying.
That's cool. And having grown up in various places around the world, you got exposed to a lot of different, ways of living and cultures. What are some of the things that you learned through those experiences? How have they made you into a better coach?
I would say empathy, growing up in different cultures and languages and countries and continents, growing up, like you met people where they were, and at the base level, we're all the same. We're all, not to get super woo, but like we're all one human race. Yeah. And I think we have more that unites us and separates us. And for me, the fortunate thing is growing up, a lot of times what really broke down any sort of language or cultural barriers with sport, because it's such a universal endeavor. So, when I was in South Africa, I picked up rugby and cricket. But then when I came to the US, because of that foundation, I was able to pick up American football and baseball, slightly different, but like not too different fundamentally. And then running, which is something I picked up pretty early on, that's the same in every country and every culture. So it's just great. It's been great to learn to meet, again, people where they are, as far as, like I said, with running, but like growing up in different countries and different cultures, and that exposure just allowed me to get to connect with people at a very base level and understand them and see them as individuals and as just regular people. Just like maybe there's a barrier with where it's language, but once you overcome that, it's very similar. We all want a lot of the same things. So, now when I work with people from all walks of life, I've worked with a lady that lives in Dubai, and I've never been there, but like I can understand her goals and I can understand her concerns and things like that. And they're no different than the guy training in South Africa, So it's really cool to kind of see that in real time. But like these two people don't know each other, and they might not ever meet. But like if they were to meet at a race, they would get along instantly because they both have like the same sort of build up and same experiences. And like, because, if you're a runner regardless of where you come from. Like we all experience the same sort of fears, especially on those long runs and on the races. Like, am I ready for this race? Did I train enough? Like, et cetera. So yeah, it's great to see that in real time, in real life, and not just experience it anecdotally.
With growing up in these different places where you said different sports and learned to play them, do you think, I just think a lot of runners seem to, actually I'm going to let you answer yourself before I start saying my own opinion. Do you think all those other sports that you played helped you to look at running in a different way to maybe someone who came up just running as their primary and only sport?
Yeah, certainly. I was born in Barcelona, so my first exposure to running was actually by playing football, what the US calls soccer. So, in years later when I came to the US around high school age, it was interesting that running was not looked at as a cool sport, and it was more of like other sports punishment. Like I remember on the football team, American football team, we would have to run laps around the stadium as punishment. And basketball, same thing. But the way I've grown up having exposure to different sports, and my parents put me in different sports and martial arts as well and things like that, is that it just taught me physical literacy, which is like being comfortable moving in your own body. And that's something that now as a parent, I really teach my kids and and kind of expose them to, because I don't need them to specify or be specific in any sport, mastery that is. I just want them to, hey, this is a ball, let's go out and throw it. Like, this is a stick, let's throw it, let's run, let's sprint, let's jump, let's kick, like whatever. And, as they come into their own, maybe one or the three of them might gravitate more into running. And if so, then happy to encourage that. But that's not for me to decide. For me as a parent, I feel like I just need to introduce movement, physical literacy, and activity to them. And that's something that I got exposed to, whether I had the terminology for it or not, by being in different countries and different sports. I picked up squash in South Africa as well. I'd never heard of it. And then when I came to the US, I went to a club and I wanted to play squash, and they had never heard of it, but they had racquetball. And I was like, okay, like, rules are slightly different, racket's slightly different, but I could do this. So it's like, that has always been with me. And then running, as I said, just like being able to move my body and being fortunate enough to move my body is something that obviously has stayed with me, and I want to pass on to my kids.
Thank you to Precision for your support of me and the Running for All podcast. I hoped I would be running lots of ultras this year. That is not my reality. I am having surgery, and that's going to mean ultras are definitely not something I'm going to be doing, at least in the first half of the year. But one of the beautiful things about this is that it does give me the opportunity to really train and practice my stomach, because one of the biggest things for us as runners is getting our fueling correctly. And if, by the way, you don't know how much fuel you should be taking, how much hydration, electrolytes you should be taking, Precision has a free fuel and electrolyte or fuel and hydration planner. It's free. You don't have to use Precision stuff, but you should definitely go check out the links in the show notes to go get yourself that planner, use it, make the most of it. You can also get a free consultation with the Precision team. No strings attached, just go take opportunity of that. That is in the show notes. But today I want to talk about practicing. So one of the biggest things is practicing your gel and nutrition. And for me, that's something I was never particularly good at when I was running at my best. And I know I left a lot of time on the table by not doing that. So that's where while I have been biking, I'm up to 34 miles, hoping to get to 50 before I go in for my surgery. With that, I've been able to test out the gels. The PF30 gels has 30 grams of carb. They go down easily. You don't get flavor fatigue. They are just enjoyable to take down, even not just for a gel, just in general. And I definitely encourage you to go check them out. If you use code Tina Sent Me at precisionhydration.com, you can get yourself 15% off. That is code Tina Sent Me. Go check out their gels. Go check out their chews, their electrolytes. They will take care of you, and I'm excited to hear what you think. Go check it out. Yeah. I recently took my daughter's quite, my older daughter is quite a nervous person in general. And I'm sure the same as you, people say to me, oh, is she going to run? And I'm like, I don't know if she wants to someday. I'm not thinking about it right now. But I took her to a climbing wall, and she just like scaled up it with no fear. And my mouth was open because I was like, what am I seeing right now? Like, she just confidently went to the top of this wall. And so that was a real moment for me where I was like, okay, this is clearly like a strength for her. Like, maybe it becomes a passion, maybe it doesn't, but it's something that she enjoys, and she's enjoying developing those muscles of pulling herself up. And it was one of those moments where I thought, okay, I've got to like find ways to get her to try different things, because maybe some of them she will or won't like, and others I wouldn't expect, like rock climbing, she will excel at, and find that she enjoys it. But it's especially when you have parents who are runners, it's very tempting to just default to that, because that's what they see you doing. That's what they think that is kind of I don't know, they're looking for your attention and love, so they might think that's the way to go for it. But it really showed me it's good to have them try other things. So I'm glad that you said that as well. I want to speak to the parenting side of you in terms of, you have all these opportunities that come your way through your work with road runners, through the other, work that you do, through your coaching. And then you also are a parent of 3. How do you juggle which things to say yes to and which things to say no to? Now, I understand for the listeners, your dilemma might not be quite the same if you don't, work in the same line of work that Roberto and I do, but it can apply in other ways, like maybe work opportunities or social events. How do you decide which things you take on and say yes, and which things you say, nope, I think I'd rather be home and present with my family?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think as a parent, regardless of your vocation, that's something you're always going to struggle because, for most parents who want to be around their kids, you can't be around them all the time because you have to work, and what work looks different for everybody, whether it's a traditional 9 to 5, 5 days a week in an office or what have you. So, I'm fortunate enough to have a setup that I worked very hard to reach where I have a little bit more flexibility. But even within that, there's always opportunities here and there that, as you mentioned, that you can't take because you really can't do everything. So I think for me, as I said earlier, and I can't remember if we're on air or not, but I'm a big lover of time, and time is one of our greatest assets that no matter how much money you have in the bank, as far as I know, you can't buy time back. So I look at my kids, how old are they? And all three of my kids are at an age right now where they actually, fortunately, want their parents around. I could say, hey, we're going off to Barcelona tomorrow, and they're happy to go along or what have you. So I know that the day will come someday, and my kids are obviously three different ages where they'll start to want to do things on their own or things with their friends or what have you. So I look at time in that way where it's like I have a small window of time again where I need to try to be as present as possible. Of course, I have certain responsibilities, financially and things like that. But when I come up to those sort of questions, I say like, okay, what are the pros and cons? Like, yeah, like if I'm making $1 million a year, it would change our lives. But if I'm making $1 million a year and my kids see me one day a week, they could have all the toys, but like they need their parent, right? And that's obviously an extreme example. But I think for me, it really comes down to like, is this an opportunity that I think could come around again, even if it looks slightly different? And if it is, and I don't feel like I'm sacrificing time with my kids, then I'll take it. If it is, and I feel like I would sacrifice time with my kids, then I'll pass. Like a quick example, most recently, my now 7-year-old just had her birthday on the 25th of March. And I had a great opportunity to travel out to California to do some interviews for the Olympics. But my 7-year-old was like, Papa, are you going to miss my birthday? And I was like, no, because she'll only be 7'1", and she'll only want me at her birthday party for who knows how many more years. Eventually she'll hit 21 or whatever. So it's the sort of thing where I was like, yeah, the Olympics are every 4 years, but there'll be other opportunities. So you can't take every opportunity, but obviously you have to be strategic. But right now, spending quality time with my kids sort of is my North Star. And I try to figure out how I can make that possible around my work-life balance.
What about the other direction for someone who struggles with saying yes to things? You maybe could use doing the speed project in, is it Atacama? Is that how you say that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing that recently was something that you did say yes to. What would you say to someone who does struggle to take opportunities? Maybe it's a work, quote unquote, work trip like that is, but maybe it could just be a weekend away from their family.
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially speaking to those parents out there who are listeners, is like, you also have to remember to live for yourself as well, because I think makes you a more balanced individual. So I'm one of those parents who I probably on the extreme end where like I hyper love being around my kids, and hopefully someday they'll be like, Papa, you're around too much. But I need some time to myself. And you need to have hobbies and adventures. And again, what that looks like for everybody might be different. But for some people, that's just running and getting away for those weekend races and things like that, which is perfectly fine. But for me, my relationship with running over the last 8 years or so since I retired has changed and evolved. As I said before, I try to evolve myself. So I thought, okay, I've done a handful of marathon or world marathon majors. I've done all sorts of types of races. I've never done a race of this magnitude, of this kind, where I'm captaining. It's a relay, it's an ultra marathon, it's in Chile, etc. So I said, this is an opportunity to experience running in a different capacity, and I could tell that I would regret not taking the opportunity. And I actually had a prior opportunity, but it was during the pandemic and when my son was born. So I passed up on it and it came around. So yeah, I would say for people, it's like, look at it as a balance. Like, is it something that you feel like you would regret if you didn't take it? And if so, then kind of go through a checklist. Why would you regret it? Can I swing it financially? What's the cost as far as time away from my kids, like, or the strain on my partner, et cetera? And, none of these decisions go in a vacuum. I speak with my lovely and supportive wife, and she was like, please do, because she's been around me long enough for my running career that she knows that my joy of running now is in the service of others. And this was something where I was going to actually be able to enjoy running on my own in a sense, and not coaching or pacing somebody. So I was like, yeah, let me try this, and really no regrets. It was such an awesome experience, and one that I'd never had an experience like that in running. And you mentioned before, 20 years removed from the Olympics, it becomes harder and harder to say that. So it makes it that much more special to be able to find a unique way to experience running and share it with others.
Yeah, I love that. And I've never been to or experienced the Speed Project, but I hope to at some point. But it just looks like it's such a unique and just bonding and fun. I don't know. I'm very envious every year when I see all the videos come out afterwards. It just looks like something that like a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. And I'm glad you got to take that up and do that. So final area that I want to have you talk about is just when it comes to, you mentioned there about giving back, finding ways to, pace, guide, support other runners. I am very much in the same state in that I've been doing a lot of guiding and support runner-ing and ways of giving back as well. And I really, really am loving this stage of my life with doing that. What would you say to someone listening who, maybe they were that person that resonates with, I need to step back from my goal, or maybe they are at a point where they're like, okay, I think I might want to take a break from goals. What would you say to encourage them to do something like that, even if they're not you and I who can say, okay, I can run anywhere from 1:20.5 to 4 hours and a half, but they maybe can do something else? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say, take a stab at it, because, the more you run, the more you gather experiences, and the more you realize that if you have an opportunity to pay it forward, you could really be positively affecting and impacting somebody else's life. And you never know how much. I ran for so long in a selfish manner, meaning professionally, where it was all centered around me. And I knew that I wanted to give back to the sport someday. I didn't know exactly how and when. And then when I retired, I fortunately was able to link up with New York Roadrunners and kind of evolve through there. But for most people, you don't need to take such a long, circuitous route. You could just, like, if you belong to a running group, or you have a running partner, or even if it's your partner, your spouse, what have you, like, hey, what are your goals? Can I help you? And it might just be as simple as helping them train, or maybe even pacing them. And there's obviously great organizations out there like Achilles who, have their own process of accepting volunteers. But just by you taking those steps, you're paying it forward and you're positively impacting somebody else's life. And then you could then see them pay it forward. Like a quick story with me in this case is there's Dykeman Run Club up in Washington Heights in New York City. And their founder, Elvin Adames, I met him years and years ago, I think 2018 or 17, 18, as part of like a partnership that his bank had with New York runners. And I started working with him and a bunch of other runners, and he could barely accomplish a half marathon. I can't remember, like north of 2 hours. He was, newish to running. Fast 4 years later, he caught the bug. He's learned so much. He started the Dykeman Run Club. He's paid it forward. He's done, I think, 4 or 5 world marathon majors. He's running Boston coming up. And he's been able to positively impact so many people. And it's like, it's so great to have been able to play a part in that, but then also just see him take the baton and go forward. And so you just never know who you're inspiring and affecting. And it doesn't take a Herculean effort. And you also don't have to be the world's fastest person to do that. You just have to be willing to step out there and volunteer and help somebody. And then, yeah, like you're always going to be quicker than somebody else. So just by pacing somebody, you're helping them and they could pay it forward.
Yeah, love that. Thank you so much. Roberto, is there anything you want to say to the listeners that you haven't had a chance to say, or any final closing thoughts for them?
It's my opportunity to get deep. No, I would just say, I'm a big lover of life, and just be present, like in your running, in your life, because you're never going to be as young as you are today. And tomorrow's not guaranteed for us. So just enjoy running as much as you can. I see most of your listeners are runners. So make it your run. Don't let the run own you, and just enjoy it, because you are in control of that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. I will put links to find Roberto online, also his website if you're interested in coaching. Thank you so much for joining me. I've loved our conversation, and look forward to randomly passing you on our way somewhere else very soon.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we go any further, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Running for Real team. Without them, I would not be able to do barely anything compared to what I'm able to do today. They are behind the scenes. They are there for me. I am just so appreciative of them. To Jeremy Nessel, our podcast editor, audio consultant, and someone who's been with me since the start. To Sally Pontarelli, our content and operations manager, who is there day to day doing all the things to help me be successful. To Kelsey Wang, our head of design, and Louise Murphy, our associate designer. And finally, to Sandy Gutierrez, our photographer and content strategist. I am appreciative of all of you and wouldn't be able to do what I do without you. I really loved my conversation with Roberto. I hope you enjoyed that one too, and it gets you thinking in a different way. So maybe if you've been stuck, if you've been feeling like you're banging your head against a wall, I hope you got some things to think about today. And also, as Roberto mentioned, go sign up at Achilles International. There'll be a link in the show notes, as well as United in Stride, which is where I have come across a lot of my guiding opportunities, if that is something that interests you. There will also be links in the show notes to go check out Roberto's social media and his coaching by going to runningforreal.com/episode 395. You will also find links to our sponsors in there. I encourage you to go check those out. runningforreal.com/episode 395. Thank you to AG1. Thank you to Tracksmith. And thank you for Precision for your support. I can't wait to see you next Friday. Thanks for listening.